All right, let's talk a little bit about shelter. So far as shelter concerned, sheltering in your home is certainly the most beneficial and the most viable option that you have in any kind of a disaster situation. It is the preferred option. If you shelter at home, you have access to all your stuff. So all of the bedding, all of the camp supplies, all of the food in your pantry, all of the normal stuff that you have, it's there. If your gas or electric is still on, your stove will still work. You may not have utilities. You may not have heat. You may or may not be able to cook depending on the type of stove that you have. You may not have light if the electricity is off, and you may not have water if the water supply is disrupted. But your home or your apartment is going to provide significant protection against the weather and give you at least some sense of security. A couple of things to note about shelter in your home. Even if you have to leave your home in a flooding situation or a severe storm situation, you need to know how to turn off all of your utilities such as gas, electric, and water. If you have to leave your home, or even if you're stuck in your home without heat during a severe winter storm, you should turn off the water to your house and drain the pipes as much as possible. Otherwise, these pipes are going to freeze and burst. Turn off the gas and electric, because when the utilities come back on, depending on if there's been flooding or some other damage to your house, this can set up a situation where there's going to be a fire or even an explosion. So if you have to leave your house, or if you're going to shelter in your house and the utilities are off, you should turn them off so that when they come back on, you can turn them back on from your house in a controlled manner. So what are you going to do if you have to leave your house? This is where a go bag comes into play. A go bag is simply something that you grab that's going to meet your needs if you have to leave your house. So this bag can actually end up being quite large, depending on what you need in it. It's going to contain water and food. It should have a certain amount of cash that you can take with you. All of your identification and important papers need to be easily accessible and thrown into that bag before you go. There need to be some basic tools such as wrenches, pliers, screwdrivers, maybe a socket set. Certainly knives and such as that will need to be in it. If you're potentially going to need to provide shelter for yourself, then you should think about a tent or a tarp, sleeping bag, sleeping pads, also in this kit. Portable stoves, portable water purification, camping equipment that you would take on a backpacking trip is something that is also going to be good to throw in this bag. Light, good flashlights, matches need to be in this bag or ready so that you can throw them in quickly and get on the road. So I mentioned for your go bag that you should have a tent or a sleeping bag and some sleeping pads in there. Other options include lightweight tarps that you can put up if the weather's not too bad. And if you're only worried about a light rain. Some mosquito netting to provide some protection against bugs can be very helpful and very comfortable. A rescue blanket or some other sort of waterproof footprint that you can put on the ground to protect you a little bit from the ground can be really, really helpful. If you find yourself with absolutely nothing, one of the other videos in this course talks about a debris hut. A debris hut is a shelter that's made from debris that's found around you. Sticks, leaves, grasses, things like that. It is a very close kind of triangular or mound-shaped hut that you can huddle in that will provide you some degree of protection from rain and cold. It does not last more than a few days. You're basically building a home for insects and rodents. They love that kind of place to live in, so after a couple of days, you're going to be sharing your debris hut with field mice, insects, and other creatures. I've slept in these. They are not overly comfortable. However, if you're in the middle of nowhere with virtually nothing, it's going to keep you alive at least a little bit longer. So there are other options as far as shelter is concerned. Part of a personal family preparedness plan should include at least some consideration of alternate housing. These would include planned meeting places. It's nice if a disaster occurs and the whole family is at home and we all meet in the living room and we start in a fireplace and roast marshmallows and add chocolate and make s'mores and sing Kumbaya or whatever happens to be the favorite family song. But that's not what usually happens. Mom and dad are at work or at school, kids are at school, grandma's here, uncle's there, and whoever else is wherever else. So have a meeting place for the family and or friends to gather when going home is not an option. Certainly if going home is an option, that's the best place where everybody should meet. But if you can't get to the house, if that area has been evacuated, or something else along those lines, then a designated place where you're going to meet that is relatively safe is very, very important. These places are often places where individuals and other families will gather, and services such as water, food, shelter, and other things might be available. Beyond this, plan meeting places outside the area. So again, in that situation where everybody's scattered through town, dad picks up the kids, or picks up some of the kids, mom picks up some of the other kids, roommate goes here and another roommate goes there, you can't get back to the house, and you have to evacuate the area. Have a meeting place outside the area that you can go to. So for instance, here in Pittsburgh, you might have relatives that live in Erie, which is a couple of hours north up on Lake Erie. Or you might have relatives in Johnstown or somewhere in Ohio. That's a couple of hours away. So designate that as a meeting place where you're going to go if you can't get back home and you have to leave the area. A couple of comments here about organized shelters from organizations such as Red Cross, FEMA, Public Health, and that sort of thing. These shelters provide good security. They get you out of the weather. They usually provide food, water. There's usually medical care available at these shelters. They are controlled environments. You are not a lone wolf when you go to these shelters. The Red Cross, FEMA, Public Health, whoever is running the shelter, they don't just have to worry about you. They have to worry about 1,000 people, more or less, that are in that shelter. So they have to take care of all of those people and all of those people's needs. These shelters are often crowded. They're bright, although they do try to turn the lights down when you sleep, but they don't turn them off. Your easy chair does not come with you to the shelter. You might get a folding chair and a cot, and that's about all. As I said, they're usually bright, they're usually noisy. When you stake out your cot in the sleeping area, you've got to think that it's just you, maybe you and your family, and 1,000 other people. Those 1,000 other closest friends and relatives may not know you or anybody else there. These are high-stressed situations. You are in a high-stress situation anyway because you're displaced from home and there's a disaster going around you. Shelters work hard to keep things calm and meet your needs, but these are difficult situations. Hotels do offer another alternative. The disadvantage to a hotel is, well, it costs a lot of money, and you may need to have reservations. If there is a disaster coming, everybody and their brother is going to try to get away from the disaster, and they're all going to the same hotel that you're going to. So if a disaster's coming, you need to be evacuated. Get out of the area early. Make reservations so you have a place to stay when you do get out of there. The advantage is that usually the functioning hotels are outside of the immediate disaster area. There'll be food and water in the area, although you may have to pay for the food, and the hotel itself is going to cost you some money. However, it's a whole lot more comfortable, a a whole lot better than sleeping on the ground, sleeping in a shelter, or in a half broken down building.